Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Southern Cross Drive podcast, where we speak all things Two Oceans Half Marathon. Really, really excited. We are coming to the business end of things here. And as always, got your coach, Devlin Eyden, with us. Dev, how's things going?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, good. Looking forward to it. Like you said, business end. It's things are starting to get real.
Things are starting to get real, and I know there's a lot going on in Cape Town at the moment. Anyways, I mean, even before Two Oceans is, I mean, I think it's Cape Town Cycle Tour that happened today. Next week, Cape Epic is starting. Dev, I know you probably, yeah, a little bit of FOMO, or yes or no? Are you happy you're doing it, not doing it?
No, massively. Every year I actually don't do any work in that week of Epic, at least in the morning, because I'm so glued to the live broadcast. And it's definitely something I wish I could be back there doing again. But yeah, it's like you said, lots happening in Cape Town. They really do pretty well in the next couple of weeks with sporting events.
Yeah, it's an awesome time to be in Cape Town. So slightly jealous of you Cape Townians with all that you've got going on. So that's cool. But we'll be down there in a couple of weeks, 4 to be exact. So really looking forward to that. Dev, 4 weeks to go. Where are we now from a training perspective? What are the things we should be considering?
Yeah, so as you said, we are at the business end. There probably is a little bit of kind of mental fatigue around sticking to plans. You've been training for quite a long time now, well, hopefully quite a long time now. I think really just important here is now's the time to be staying as healthy as possible. We have mentioned it, healthy and injury free. We've mentioned it in the past, but it is critical at this stage. If you start getting colds and little nagging sniffles, nip it in the bud as quick as you possibly can. If it means taking a day or two off, you really don't want this prolonging as we get into our last 2 big weeks of training, really, before we go into a taper. And when I talk about those last 2 big weeks, is we still do have, and probably not your longest run, but we still have some significant volume, and in terms of long runs, still coming up on the weekends. So there's still work to be done. I know, like I said, it might be mentally fatiguing over and above, hopefully not too much physical fatigue. But yeah, it's kind of digging deep at the moment, knowing you've only got really 2 big weeks to go before we start that taper, start freshening up. And then, I mean, we'll talk about the taper much closer to the time in another episode. But it's usually then at that stage where you're like, geez, can we just get on with this race? Because now you're kind of itching to get going. And you're so over the training in that already. So I think, yeah, just hanging in there, staying healthy, staying injury free, keep up the hard work. You should still be doing the strength training, that's for sure. And then, yeah, we'll obviously start prepping closer to the time for how to tackle the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, excellent. It really is all getting exciting. Dev, talk us through a little bit of, I mean, obviously the seeding is slightly different to the ultra. You don't have to qualify, but it's still a seeding process essentially. Yeah, how did that work with the starts and the different waves and everything on the day so people can start preparing?
Yeah, so they'll seed you based on sort of previous, whether it's 10K or half marathon distances. They'll put you into waves or batches. What is nice about Oceans is it isn't a mass start. So it's not like you might have done a half marathon where there is this mass starts and there's thousands of runners trying to get across the line and you sitting at the back just waiting and waiting. Because they start you in waves, I think there's sort of a minute or 90-second waves that they keep moving. It actually moves quite quickly through the numbers. So you don't have to worry about trying to make up any lost time because it's taken you so long to get across the start line. It moves through very quickly. So that's nothing to be concerned about. Keep in mind, look, that in the past, this race used to start in the dark because they would have started it with the ultra on the same day. But because they've moved that now and the half is on Sunday, we're actually starting a little bit later. So just check out the website. I'm not 100% sure on start times. I actually don't even know if they've actually announced that just yet. But check out for the start time. It's usually starting to get light and a little bit lighter at that stage already. So not as much sort of focus and concern is needed as if you were running in the dark. But still something to keep in mind is because there are still so many runners on the road, this and the light might be low, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
there still is the risk of tripping over things like cat's eyes. There's often people, if it is a bit chilly in the morning, someone's wearing a black bag or plastic bags over them for warmth, but then they just discard those. So there is still a risk with the amount of people as well on the route that you're slipping on plastic bags. We've seen it in the past. And the last thing you want is to ruin your race because you've done something silly in the first couple of 100 meters and slipped on a plastic bag or tripped over a cat eye. So just be cautious around that. I would also recommend, I mentioned now, it could potentially be chilly on the day. I mean, this is Cape Town, anything's possible. Try and have something that you can keep yourself warm at the start and in that start shoot while you're warming up, but discard a long route. We obviously try and urge you not to use plastic bags because I mean that stuff doesn't always get picked up and not really environmentally friendly. So if you have the means and you can have maybe a very cheap or basic sort of long top that you're happy to get rid of, or if you have got someone further on the road that you can just discard and give it to them, always helps. But I would try and prep for just having something warmer in the likelihood that it might be a bit chilly in the morning for the start.
Yeah, excellent advice. Stuff that's super helpful there, Dev. Guys, we are definitely going to tap into a little bit about pacing and how to tackle the race in this episode. So please stay tuned for that. But before we do that, Dev, for any of the novices out there, or I guess even just as a nice reminder, if you have run the 21 before, what's the route like? Like, can you break it down for us? Not necessarily kilometer by kilometer, but yeah, what are people anticipating, and then we can get into how to tackle the race particularly.
Yeah, so everyone's worst nightmare when you say this is a net uphill run, but don't stress, it's not like massively net uphill. But what I mean by net uphill is basically the finish is higher than what the start is. So we are at some point going to have to make up that difference. And we'll talk through that in a second. So that's just something to note, that this is a net uphill race. Over the 21Ks, there are 3 proper hills, or I like to call them proper hills to navigate. Obviously, there's always a little bit of rollers and drags here and there, but there's 3 main sort of challenges on this route that we need to navigate. Really important here, guys, is the first 5Ks of this route is actually quite challenging. So it's something we'll talk about the pacing, but I do need you to consider we need to start easier and hold back a little bit in the first 5Ks, especially in the first 2Ks, because it's a little bit of a drag. So where we start on main road is a slight uphill, but you don't notice it because there's so many people, there's the vibe, you're still feeling really good because it's the start of the race. And we always tend to kind of get caught up in the atmosphere. We go out a little bit too hard. The first 5Ks is basically uphill, not quite making up all the net uphill that we require, but there's a fair challenge. When we start, we turn off main road. So just before Cavendish, we turn right off main road and then start on a gradual climb. So obviously a little bit more than what the start is on main road. We start climbing a little bit. And then when we turn left onto what we like to call Weinberg Hill. Now, that's really your first long, hard climb of the day. And that takes you to about the 5K mark. It is a challenge. It's early in the race, so it is something that you obviously can kind of conserve a little bit. You will be feeling good. And because you're feeling good, it really is important to have that strategy on how you're going to tackle the hill. You really don't want to be pushing yourself too hard, too early, because I mean, there's still lots to go. This will only take you to the 5K mark. Once you get to the top of there, we kind of head on to the M3, which then becomes a nice fast section. So we've now had the first 5Ks, which has been that drag, the challenge of Weinberg Hill. We get onto that. So that's where the first bit of reprieve comes in. And it is a pretty fast section when we're on the M3 on that highway. It's a pretty cool experience to be running on the highway.
Dev, if I can ask you there, with that, you've had quite a bit of climbing now, and that is a nice fast section, like you say. Is that a section where we then go all out, like give it horns down there? Is that good advice?
So yes and no, and I hate saying it in that sense. So we do need to classify or split kind of the level of runner, if we want to call it that. So it is a fast section. It is generally a section where, like I said, we get a bit of reprieve and we can make up a little bit of time, but it's definitely not a section where we need to be going all out and pushing yourself hard. When I talk about sort of just splitting the ability of runner or the types of runners, if you're a sub 90 minute, maybe even a sub 145 half marathoner, what you can do, this will be a section where you will be pushing a little bit harder than what a typical strategy would be. Because of the climbs and how they are spaced out in this route, if you're running a sub 90-minute half, you do need to be trying to make up a little bit of time on the flats and on the downhills. So you will be pushing yourself a little bit harder than normal. Again, still not necessarily all out. You've still got lots of work to go, but this is the time where you would be banking. I hate saying that, but you are making up a little bit of time here. If you're a 2-hour or slower runner, I would recommend, I mean, there's the reprieve. You can definitely get into a really good stride and get comfortable, but don't start pushing yourself faster than you need to. There's a lot of work still to come. There's a lot of challenging climbing still to come, and we need to save your legs for as long as possible to try and make up only later into the race. So I think that really is important, that you are just differentiating where you fit into that category, and don't get caught up in the fact that you are now on the highway and think you need to stick to the speed limit of as fast as you possibly can.
Okay, cool. So from the M3 from there, then yeah, carry on telling us where we go from there.
Yeah, so we then turn off the highway, and if I'm not mistaken, does kind of a little bit of a U-turn section. It's kind of rolling, so you're going to get kind of ups and downs and something again where you just need to find a comfortable rhythm. A little bit quicker, obviously, on the downs, a little bit slower on the ups, but really just managing your pace, managing your effort as you get off the highway. And that'll roll quite gently all the way to Southern Cross Drive. Now, Southern Cross Drive, I like to call the big dog of the race. And I spoke about Weinberg Hill being a challenge. You thought Weinberg Hill was tough. The unfortunate thing is Weinberg Hill was in the start of the race. Southern Cross Drive now gets to a point where this is the big dog of the race. It's tough. It's a long climb. So Southern Cross Drive, I think, is about 2.7 to 3 Ks. So, I mean, it's a significant climb, and also gets really, really steep in some parts. There's some sections, especially towards the top, that it becomes very difficult to run. So my big suggestion here is managing your effort and really employ a walk-run strategy. So that's absolutely critical. And that walk-run strategy is going to be different for everyone. So whether it's 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 1 minute on, 30 seconds off, whatever it might be, the walk breaks will be a brisk walk. So you're still pushing yourself, keep the arms swinging, keep the body momentum moving forward. But really do break that hill up, because it is so long. It's something you must make sure, obviously, nutrition, maybe look at hitting a gel a little bit before, if gels are something that you do use, but something that you are taking in before you get to Southern Cross, so that you know you've at least got energy in the tank and things are working by the time you do get to Southern Cross Drive. Like I said, long climb, pretty steep. My main goal here, or main advice, is just get over it. And I don't mean that in the sort of figurative term. I mean, just get to the top of Southern Cross Drive, and then you'll have a little bit of reprieve from the top there. Yeah, at the top of Southern Cross Drive, you then do a U-turn onto Newlands Avenue, if I'm not mistaken, where then, like I said, you do get a little bit of reprieve. So there's a nice section here where it's mostly flat. There are a couple of, again, little drags, little rolling hills, and that's where we can, again, make up a little bit of time. Don't push yourself too hard. If you get to the top and you need to take a little bit of a walk break, first do so that you can just catch your breath. And then it's reprieve. Then you at least moving, you're finding it, okay, cool, the race is getting a little bit easier at this stage. We're well past halfway at this stage as well. So we're kind of on the home stretch. We're still not there yet, though. So that is just kind of something just to caution you around. And then you'll work your way up to the, I think it's Kirstenbosch top gate. So the way the routes changed in the past, they then now move you up towards the Kirstenbosch top gate. And that is, if I'm not mistaken, about 4 Ks to go. From there, though, it's a really nice downhill. Okay, so I think we've got probably about 1.5 to 2 Ks worth of really nice flowing downhill, which we can take full advantage of. So at this stage, because we've only got 4 Ks left to go, I do recommend pushing a little bit. It still work. So keep in mind, we've counted 2 big hills. We've still got a third one I mentioned. But that downhill with 4 Ks to go, we can push ourselves a little bit if we're feeling good, make up a little bit of time in that sense. Don't sprint it. Don't be silly, because obviously on the downhills, you've always got that little risk of injury if you try and push yourself too hard. But let gravity do the work, make up a little bit of time there and take full advantage of it. You'll then continue down, like I said, I think it's past the bottom gate, so Kirstenbosch bottom gate. And then with about 2 Ks to go, we then hit the last climb of the day. So that is our third challenge. And because it's so close to the end, it's something that you very often feel, geez, what are we doing here? Dev told me it was downhill. We're almost towards the finish of the race. Please don't shoot me. We've still got a little bit of a challenge to go. And that last climb is also quite a long climb. All right. So it almost takes us right to the finish. However, there is some reprieve along that. So you'll do it. It's not all uphill. So as much as it is a climb, and this is where we're actually going to be making up the most of our net uphill. So that difference that I spoke about, most of that is made up in these last couple of kilometers and on this last climb, but it is broken up. So there are some sections where it flattens off. You can catch your breath. You can run a little bit, still the walk-run strategy. But hopefully by here, you have kind of worked things out that you've got enough in the tank, and we can push ourselves a little bit harder now and really just empty it for those last couple of Ks. And then the last bit of that climb and towards the finish is really, it does ease off. You then start thinking, geez, I'm so close to home. It's now time. You get onto the grass there at UCT. There's such a cool vibe. The crowd's incredible. And you actually forget about the pain and everything that you've just gone through. You'll forget that Dev told you there were 3 horrible climbs and you were almost at the finish. You get onto the grass, happy days, enjoy, soak in the environment, soak in the atmosphere. And yeah, hopefully by then, massive smiles on the face, whether it's your first or your 20th, you getting that medal across the line with a big smile on your face and had a good day out there.
Awesome. And hopefully not come and shoot Dev, come and high five him on the day. That'd be ideal. So yeah, Dev, thanks for that. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, high fives all around. Yeah, so Dev, I mean, there's a lot of info in there, and guys, listen to this, in your race week, just to remind you about things as you're going into it. But Dev, from a pacing perspective, so we understand what we're tackling. I mean, it sounds like quite a tough half marathon to pace. And again, like pacing obviously being so important. If you get your pacing wrong on the day, you could have quite a long day out there. Yeah, can you maybe break that up? I mean, yeah, break it down to us into 3 to 5K chunks, almost how you would pace it and your overall pacing strategy for the race, perhaps.
If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsay and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, so look, Two Oceans Half is definitely not the easiest half marathon you're going to run. Okay, so like I said, there's some pretty challenging climbs in there. I'm not going to break it down in as much as 3K chunks, but definitely the first 5Ks is something where, like I said earlier, it is pretty tough. We start out pretty tough. There's your first big challenge is within the first 5Ks of this run. So there it is important to just hold yourself back a little bit. Make sure that you've got a pacing strategy going into the race and you're sticking to your pacing plan going up, especially in those first 5Ks. Don't let the atmosphere get to you. Don't let the fact that you're feeling good get to you. The only reason you're feeling good is because you've trained well and your tape has been on point. Hopefully had a good night's sleep leading before. But the fact that you're feeling good, and if you're feeling good in that stage, that's exactly what we want, because we want to try and keep that good feeling going for as long as we possibly can. So the first 5K is being really tough, nice and easy, warming up into it. I'm not saying you should do your warm-up then. Your warm-up should have been done before the race, but really kind of building into your race still at this stage. The rollers, so those first 5Ks, the rolling hill sections that we do get to, walk breaks. So we always talk about walk breaks. I mean, we've done a whole podcast where we discuss largely around the walk breaks. Important here is that we're starting those walk breaks early and we're doing them often. So stick to your plan of when you're putting in the walk breaks, regardless of the walk breaks you've done on the hills. It's not to say that because you've now changed strategy up and you might have broken a hill up, that you can now push a little bit longer and you don't have to walk for the next 5 or 6Ks. Still keep to your walk run strategy when you need to. Like I said, kind of rollers a little bit. That Southern Cross Drive, really challenging. So breaking that up, we'll have that factored into these pacing charts that we discussed. Those are all factored in. So stick to the strategy. Like I said, just get over it. And then once we get to basically, as I said, the top of Kirstenbosch, the top gate of Kirstenbosch with 4Ks to go, that's where, if you are 2 hours plus runner, that's where we can start putting the hammer down and making up a little bit of time. So I know it is quite late into the run, but the idea is trying to conserve as much energy as possible to get through 2 of the big challenges on the day. And then 4Ks to go, start putting the hammer down. Hopefully the nutrition's been really good. We've saved enough in the tank for that last climb for us to then say, all right, let me see what I've got. We can push ourselves a little bit harder. We can maybe try and run a little bit more up that last climb. There are those breaks up there. So we're going to cover that last 2Ks, hopefully quicker than you typically would, because we've got a little bit left in the tank. And again, by that stage, I mean, 2Ks from home, as much as it might be a bit challenging, you've probably smelt the beers, smelt the braais going at UCT already. And you kind of focus, you're like a racehorse trying to get back. And it's now just a case of getting to the finish line and empty yourself out as much as you can.
Love it. Yeah, guys, Dev, excellent info. Thank you. And guys, I think if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of this, it sounds like a lot. We've spoken around these pacing charts that we will have at the expo, and really they are so good. They're just so good, as Dev's saying. The first 5Ks are quite tough. And we'll break the pacing charts into 3K splits for you, just to keep you in check. You don't want to be hitting those first 5Ks too hard. And so really, I highly recommend these. And there'll be a whole bunch of details being sent out about how to pre-order pacing charts if you do want one, or just come and chat to us at the expo if you're not quite sure of your goal time yet and what you want to tackle. Come and chat to us at the expo, and we can help you out with those, because they really, really are so useful just to keep you in check. So come and chat to us there. Dev, a couple of perhaps caveats. I mean, we come from Joburg and Pretoria, so we're used to consistent weather. I mean, I don't know how Cape Townians deal with general weather, 4 seasons in a day. They obviously quite prepared for that. But talk us through if there are things on race day that can perhaps go wrong. What are the things that we need to prepare for? Stuff like weather.
Yeah, I think weather's probably the biggest thing on race day. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that we can't prep for, but we can prep for, in the sense that if you aren't from Cape Town and you are traveling, I do advise packing warm and wet gear. So it's not to say that, I mean, I'm definitely no weatherman. I'm not forecasting the weather this far out. But like you say, anything can happen in the day on Cape Town, and one side of the mountain can look incredible and the other side looks like it's you miserable and in the Arctic somewhere. So pack something warm. Like I said, something preferably that you can discard. Always pack something warm if it is chilly for after the race as well, if it has been a cold and cool day. Potentially something for if it is wet. So if you run in a waterproof rain jacket, ideally something that's a little bit breathable. Again, we don't try and push the plastic bag vibe, but if that's all you have, that's also always an option. Just making sure that, cold and rainy, I think, is the 2 biggest ones that, especially if you're not coming from Cape Town and it isn't cold and rainy all the time, we're not really used to that. We're not ready for it. it makes for really good running weather. So it's really good conditions for you to potentially get a good time and feel good, that it's better than running in the absolute heat. But I mean, if it's raining, we also need to consider there's always then the risk of slipping and those sort of things that we need to just be aware of as well. Again, just packing and prepping sort of stuff. On the flip side, if it is hot, making sure that you have got a hat, sunscreen, those kind of things. If you do sweat a lot, sweatbands, obviously dousing yourself in water properly on the race as well. So dipping your hat in or just pouring water in over your head makes a massive difference to how you're feeling as well. So I think just if you can, as much as the weather's uncontrollable, you can pre-plan for sort of all sorts of weather conditions. There's no real issues to route changes necessarily for the half. So usually in the past of the ultra, there's been the odd occasion where there's been a last minute route change. For the half, we generally don't need to worry about that. I think it's really just on the day, and water points as well. I mean, water points are generally pretty well stocked, and obviously oceans moving away from plastic, little cups and those sort of things. But if it is a windy day, for example, and they've got cups with a little bit of water in, and that might just blow off a table, just be prepared that you maybe have something with you, or you are taking in a little bit of extra water at the water points when and while you can. So I think those are just kind of important things. Again, it's not to scare you in any way, but it is really important that we're always just thinking about a worst case scenario, if you want to call it that, and just how to prep and also be ready to kind of change your goals and that on the fly. So if it is a very rainy day, for example, or a very hot day, you might need to just reconsider what your initial goal was. Again, I know that doesn't sound great, and like, well, if you run it here to try and run a PB, and then all of a sudden it's a really hot day, and I'm telling you now you need to throw the PB out the window. That's not what I'm saying. But mentally, you just need to prep for, look, this could be a tough day out, and just reassess what the goal is and plan for it. Because if you don't, and you still try and hang on to that, and you get nutrition or hydration strategies wrong, get super hot, that can all fly out the window, and you can actually ruin your race significantly because now you've tried to push too hard too early. So I think it's just those kind of things to keep in mind, and always just have at the back of your mind for race day, that you can prep or change things up on the fly if you need to.
I think it's such a good point. And to be honest, let me say this: don't trust as much as the weather apps and so on. Prepare for really all sorts of occasions. And I mean, Dev and I ran a race last weekend, and the weather forecast said that it was going to be 22, cloudy, chilled weather, maybe a little bit of rain. And so I didn't pack my sunglasses because I was like, it's going to be cloudy, I'm not going to need them. Well, I did pack them, I just didn't take them on the race day. And it wasn't. So the forecast was completely wrong. Maybe I was looking at the wrong area, I don't know. But yeah, it landed up being super sunny, super hot. And I was dreading the fact that I didn't have my sunglasses. So just be prepared for all sort of occasions is what Dev is saying there. So yeah, definitely exciting times. Dev, thank you so much for your expertise and your time here. This is definitely something that I think the guys running the half marathon can listen to over and over again in the week of, just getting themselves psyched up, visualizing the race. It's such a powerful way to go into your race. Guys, we're really in the business end here. Looking forward to it. Before we know it, it's going to be race day. Come and chat to us at the expo, order those pacing charts. Come and say hi, and we'll see you at the finish line and perhaps at the post finish line parties as well, to give you guys a high five. But yeah, Dev, thank you so much for your time and expertise as always. And we will see you again next week.
Cheers, everyone.